So you just got engaged. Congratulations. Seriously, that's amazing. You found someone you want to spend the rest of your life with. That's the hard part. Now comes the easy part, right? Just plan a party. How hard could it be? You open Pinterest. You start looking at venues. And suddenly you're seeing numbers that make your eyes water. $15,000 for a barn with string lights. $25,000 for a ballroom that looks like every other ballroom. $38,000 for something called a rustic chic industrial loft, which, as far as you can tell, is just an old warehouse with Edison bulbs. Your fiancée is looking at you. Her mom is looking at you. Her friends are looking at you. And everyone has an opinion about what a wedding is supposed to be. You start doing the math. Your parents offered to help with some of it. Her parents offered to help. But you're still looking at a gap. A gap that's gonna have to come from somewhere. Maybe you dip into savings. Maybe you put some on a credit card. Maybe you push back that house down payment another year. Maybe you delay starting that family. But it's your wedding. It's supposed to be the best day of your life. You only get one. You can't put a price on that, right? Right? Here's the thing. You absolutely can put a price on that. And the price is much, much higher than you think. Hi, what's up? And I spend way too much time thinking about weddings. Which is weird, because I'm not a wedding planner. I'm not a photographer. I'm not even married, technically. But I spend an absurd amount of time looking at wedding data, wedding costs, and the long-term financial impact of that one single day. If you're someone who's engaged, thinking about getting engaged, or you've ever wondered why your friends who had the big fancy weddings seem to be struggling more than your friends who eloped, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Because what I'm about to show you might upset some people. It might make you uncomfortable. It might make you question decisions you've already made. But I promise you, by the end of this video, you're going to see weddings completely differently. Now, before we dive in, I want to make something clear. Most people think investing is about having a lot of money. The truth? It's about what you keep. I'm building a community at the Frugal Investor newsletter where we strip away the hype and focus on high-impact, low-cost wealth building. Get your copy of the 15-day blueprint for wealth and financial autonomy and join a group of like-minded investors who prioritize long-term gains over short-term trends. Link is in the description. Alright, let's get into it. The number that should scare you. Let's start with a number. $35,000. That's the average cost of a wedding in the United States in 2025. $35,000. Not including the honeymoon. Not including the engagement ring. Just the wedding. Now, I want you to sit with that number for a second. $35,000. That's a down payment on a house in a lot of places. That's 2 brand new cars. That's a year of tuition at a state university. That's a fully funded emergency fund for most families. That's almost half of the median household income in this country. For one day. Now, look, I'm not here to yuck anyone's yum. If you have $1 million in the bank and you want to spend 50 grand on a party, go for it. Have fun. Send me an invitation. But here's the thing. The average couple getting married doesn't have $1 million in the bank. The average couple is in their late 20s or early 30s. They have student loans. They're just starting their careers. They're trying to figure out if they can afford to buy a house or have kids or maybe both. And they're spending $35,000 on a party. This is where it gets really interesting. Because the data on this is absolutely wild. The 7-year gap. A study from Emory University tracked thousands of couples over more than a decade. And they found something fascinating. Couples who spent more than $20,000 on their wedding were significantly more likely to get divorced than couples who spent between $5,000 and $10,000. But that's not even the most interesting part. When they looked at retirement age, they found that couples who spent under $10,000 on their wedding retired, on average, 7 years earlier than couples who spent over $30,000. 7 years. That means if you and your partner are both 30 when you get married, the couple who had the modest wedding is retiring at 60. The couple who had the big wedding is retiring at 67. That's 7 extra years of working. 7 extra years of alarm clocks. 7 extra years of commutes. 7 extra years of answering to someone else. Now, you might be thinking, Nick, correlation isn't causation. Maybe people who spend less on weddings are just more frugal in general, so they save more for retirement. And you're right, that's absolutely part of it. But it's not the whole story. Because the wedding itself creates a financial gap that compounds over time. And that compounding effect is what really matters here. The mathematics of the gap. Let's do the math. And I want you to really pay attention here, because this is where it gets painful. Let's say you're 30 years old. You're getting married. You have two options. Option A, you have a modest wedding. $10,000. You pay for it with cash you've saved over the last couple of years. You don't go into debt. You don't touch your investments. You don't delay anything. Option B, you have the average wedding. $35,000. You don't have that much cash, so you put $25,000 on credit cards. The interest rate is 18%. You're going to pay it off over the next 3 years. Let's run the numbers. Scenario 1. The couple who stays out of debt, they spend their $10,000. They move on with their lives. The money is gone, but there's no lingering financial impact. They start investing $500 a month into a diversified index fund earning 8%. After 30 years, that $500 a month has grown to about $680,000. That's their retirement fund. Scenario 2. The couple who goes into debt, they spend $35,000. They put $25,000 on credit cards at 18%. They're paying about $800 a month just on the debt for the next 3 years. Now, here's what most people don't realize. It's not just the $25,000 they're losing. It's the opportunity cost. Because during those 3 years, while they're paying off wedding debt, they can't invest. They don't have an extra $500 a month. They have an extra $800 a month going the other direction. After 3 years, the debt is paid off. They've spent about $29,000 on interest and principal. They're finally free. They start investing their $500 a month. But here's the problem. They're 3 years behind. And in investing, 3 years is not just 3 years. Because of compound interest, those first 3 years are the most valuable years you'll ever have. Let's look at where both couples end up after 30 years. The couple who stayed out of debt has $680,000. The couple who went into debt has about $510,000. That's a $170,000 difference. From one decision, one day, one party. But here's where it gets even worse. Because that $170,000 gap doesn't just mean less money. It means working longer. It means retiring later. It means saying yes to things you'd rather say no to. The couple with the bigger retirement fund can retire at 60. The couple with the smaller fund needs to work until 67. 7 years of working to pay for one day when they were 30. The psychology behind it now. Let's talk about why we do this. Because the math is clear. The data is clear. And yet, the average wedding cost keeps going up. What's going on? It's called the sunk cost fallacy, mixed with social proof. And it's a dangerous combination. Here's how it works. You get engaged. You start planning. You look at venues. The first venue you see is $3,000. That seems reasonable. But then you look at another venue. It's $5,000. It has better reviews. Your friend got married there. You start thinking, well, it's only $2,000 more. And this is the most important day of my life. Then you look at photographers. The first one is $2,000. The next one is $4,000. Her photos look amazing. You start thinking, these photos are going to last forever. I don't want to look back and regret having bad photos. Then it's the dress. Then it's the flowers. Then it's the band. Then it's the catering. And every time, it's the same conversation. It's only a little more. And this is the most important day of my life. I don't want to regret it. Here's what's really happening. Your brain is playing a trick on you. It's called escalation of commitment. The more you've already spent, the easier it becomes to spend more. Because you've already decided that this day is worth sacrificing for. So what's a little more? And social proof makes it worse. You see your friends' weddings on Instagram. You see the perfect photos. You see the beautiful venues. And you start to believe that this is normal. That this is what you're supposed to do. That if you don't do this, you're somehow failing. But here's what nobody posts on Instagram. The debt. The stress. The arguments about money. The delayed house. The delayed kids. The working until 67 instead of 60. Nobody posts that. The emotional trap. This is where it gets really interesting. Because the wedding industry knows exactly what they're doing. They've created this narrative that your wedding is the most important day of your life. And once you believe that, there's no limit to what you'll spend. Because how can you put a price on the most important day of your life? But here's the thing that nobody tells you. It's not the most important day. It's just a day. It's a beautiful, meaningful, special day. But it's one day out of thousands of days you're going to have together. What actually matters? The marriage. The partnership. The life you build together. The way you support each other through hard times. The way you celebrate each other's wins. The way you raise your kids, if you have them. The way you navigate money, career, health, and everything else life throws at you. That's what matters. Not whether the centerpieces were the right shade of blush. Not whether the band played your song. Not whether your aunt thought the food was good. And here's the kicker. The research actually shows that couples who spend less on their weddings report higher levels of marital satisfaction. Because they're not starting their marriage with a pile of debt and the stress that comes with it. Think about that. You're about to start your life together. You're about to make the most important commitment you'll ever make. And you're going to start it by creating a financial problem that will take years to solve. That's not romantic. That's not meaningful. That's just stressful. The real cost of the wedding. Let me give you a specific example. Because I think this helps make it real. My friend, let's call him Jake. Jake got married 5 years ago. He and his now wife had a beautiful wedding. About 120 guests. Nice venue. Good food. Open bar. Total cost? About $40,000. They put about half on credit cards. They're still paying it off. Not the full amount, but they've been carrying that debt for 5 years. Minimum payments. Interest accruing. It's like a ball and chain attached to their finances. They wanted to buy a house last year. They got pre-approved, but their debt-to-income ratio was too high because of the wedding debt. So they're renting. Still, at 35 years old. Because of a party they had when they were 30. They wanted to start trying for kids this year. But they're looking at the math. Daycare in their area is about $1,800 a month. They can't afford that with their current debt payments. So they're waiting, delaying starting their family, because of a party. Now, I'm not saying they regret getting married. They don't. They love each other. They're happy together. But they regret the wedding. They've told me as much. They wish they'd done something smaller. Something they could have paid for with cash. Something that didn't start their marriage with a financial anchor around their necks. And here's the thing. They're not alone. I've had this conversation with dozens of people. Couples in their 30s and 40s who are still paying for a wedding that happened a decade ago. Couples who wish they could go back and do it differently. Because here's what most people don't realize until it's too late. The day itself goes by so fast. You're so busy and stressed and pulled in a million directions. You barely have time to enjoy it. You spend months planning, tens of thousands of dollars, and the day itself is a blur. What you remember? The marriage. The partnership. The life you build after the flowers have died and the cake has been eaten and the dress is hanging in the back of the closet. The alternative. So what's the alternative? What do you actually do? Let me give you 3 alternatives. None of them require you to sacrifice the meaning or the joy of getting married. But they all require you to think differently about what matters. Alternative 1. The elopement. You and your partner go somewhere beautiful. Just the two of you, or maybe with your immediate family. You get married on a beach, or in a forest, or in a courthouse. You spend a few $1,000s on a photographer and a nice dinner. You have the most meaningful, intimate day of your lives. My brother did this. He and his wife went to the mountains. Just them and an officiant. They spent $1,000 on the whole thing. They have photos that make me cry every time I see them. They came back and had a party with friends at a brewery. It cost another $1,000. $2,000 total. No debt. No stress. Just a beautiful day that was actually about them. They bought a house 2 years later. They're on track to retire at 55. They're happy. They're secure. They're not paying for a party that happened 5 years ago. Alternative 2. The small wedding. You invite your closest people. 20, 30, 50 people. The people who actually matter. Not your dad's coworker. Not your mom's cousin you haven't seen in a decade. Just the people who will actually be part of your life going forward. You have it at a restaurant. Or a park. Or someone's backyard. You keep it simple. Good food, good drinks, good music. You spend $5,000 or $6,000 total. I've been to weddings like this. They're some of the best weddings I've ever been to. Because they're not about performance. They're not about impressing anyone. They're about celebrating with the people you actually love. Alternative 3. The cash wedding. You decide on a budget. $10,000. And you stick to it. No exceptions. You pay for everything with cash you've saved. You make trade-offs. You skip the florist and buy flowers from Trader Joe's. You skip the fancy venue and rent a community center. You skip the sit-down dinner and do a buffet. You skip the professional band and make a playlist. And you know what? Nobody notices. Nobody cares. Your guests are there to celebrate you, not to critique your floral arrangements. The $1 million question. Here's the $1 million question. Or actually, the $1 million decision. Is one day worth 7 years of your life? Because that's what we're talking about here. 7 years of working. 7 years of alarm clocks. 7 years of missing your kids' school events. 7 years of not being able to travel or pursue your passions. 7 years of your life that you could be spending doing whatever you want. All for one day. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Nick, you're being dramatic. It's just a party. It's not that serious. But the math doesn't lie. The data doesn't lie. Couples who spend less on weddings retire earlier. Couples who go into debt for weddings have more stress, more arguments, and more financial struggles. This isn't about being cheap. It's about being intentional. It's about understanding that every dollar you spend today is a dollar your future self can't spend. And when you're talking about tens of thousands of dollars, you're talking about years of your future self's life. What your future self would say. I want you to imagine something with me. Imagine you're 65 years old. You've been working for 40 years. You're tired. You're ready to be done. You want to travel. You want to spend time with your grandkids. You want to finally have time for the hobbies you never had time for. But you can't retire yet. Because you don't have enough saved. You need to work another 7 years. You're at your desk. It's Monday morning. Your alarm went off at 6. You didn't sleep well. Your back hurts. You're looking at your computer screen, and you're thinking about what got you here. And you remember that wedding. That beautiful, expensive wedding. The one that cost $35,000. The one that started your marriage with debt. The one that delayed your house. The one that delayed your investing. The one that cost you 7 years. What would you tell your 30-year-old self? Would you tell them to do it again? Would you tell them that the centerpieces were worth it? That the fancy venue was worth it? That the 7 years of your life you're giving up right now was worth that one day 40 years ago? Or would you tell them something else? The marriage, not the wedding. Here's what I want you to remember. You're not planning a wedding. You're starting a marriage. The wedding is one day. The marriage is the rest of your life. And the marriage is going to involve a lot of decisions about money. Where to live, whether to buy a house, whether to have kids, how to save for college, when to retire. The way you handle this first major financial decision sets the tone for everything that follows. If you go into debt for the wedding, you're telling yourselves that debt is okay for big life events. That it's worth sacrificing your future for something you want today. If you pay cash, if you stay within your means, if you prioritize your long-term security over short-term gratification, you're setting a pattern. You're telling yourselves that your future matters. That your security matters. That your freedom matters. And that pattern? That's what builds wealth. That's what builds security. That's what builds the life you actually want to live. Actionable steps. Alright, so you're engaged. Or you're thinking about getting engaged. What do you actually do? Here's the action plan. Step 1. Have the hard conversation. Sit down with your partner and talk about money. Not the wedding. Money. Your debt. Your savings. Your income. Your goals. How you want to handle finances as a couple. This is uncomfortable. Most couples don't do it. And that's why most couples fight about money. Have the conversation now, before you're making big decisions under pressure. Step 2. Decide on your wedding budget together, not your parents' budget. Not your friend's budget. Your budget. Based on your income, your savings, and your goals. And here's the rule. Pay cash. No credit cards. No loans. No borrowing from your parents. If you don't have the cash, you can't afford it. Step 3. Use the future self test for every expense. Ask yourselves, is this worth working longer for? Because that's what it comes down to. Every dollar you spend today is a dollar your future self has to earn back. That $10,000 venue? That's 6 months of work for your 65-year-old self. Is that worth it? That $5,000 dress? That's 3 months of work for your 65-year-old self. Is that worth it? Step 4. Prioritize what actually matters. What do you actually care about? Good food? Great photos? Music? Being with your people? Spend money on those things. Cut everything else. If you care about photos, hire a great photographer and cut the flowers. If you care about food, have an amazing meal at a restaurant with 20 people instead of a mediocre meal with 100. Step 5. Start investing the difference. Whatever you save by having a modest wedding, invest it. That's not fun money. That's freedom money. That's the money that's going to let you retire early. That's the money that's going to let you say yes to the things that actually matter. If you save $20,000 by having a modest wedding, and you invest that at 8%, in 30 years that's $200,000. $200,000 of freedom. $200,000 of security. $200,000 of options. All from one decision, one conversation, one day. Let me end with a story about someone who did this right. My cousin, Sarah, she got married 2 years ago. She and her husband are both teachers. They don't make a ton of money, but they're smart about it. When they got engaged, they sat down and had the conversation. They looked at their finances. They looked at their goals. They wanted to buy a house. They wanted to start a family. They wanted to retire by 60. And they decided that a big wedding didn't fit with those goals. So they had a small wedding. 25 people. They rented a beautiful Airbnb in the mountains. A friend officiated. They ordered food from a local restaurant. They made a playlist. Sarah wore a dress she found at a vintage store for $200. The whole thing cost about $4,000. They paid cash. No debt. No stress. After the wedding, they took the money they saved, about $20,000 compared to the average wedding, and they put it in a high-yield savings account. That became the down payment on their house. They bought a home 6 months later. Now, they're investing $500 a month. They're on track to retire at 58. They have a beautiful home. They have a beautiful marriage. They have security. They have options. And they have photos from that day that make me cry every time I see them. Photos of the two of them in the mountains, just after they said their vows, with the biggest smiles I've ever seen. They didn't need $35,000 to have a beautiful wedding. They didn't need to impress anyone. They just needed each other. I really hope this video brought you some value today. If it did, comment more down below. I'm reading through those to decide what topics to cover next, so definitely let me know if you want more of this. Look, here's the bottom line. Your wedding is one day. Your marriage is the rest of your life. Don't sacrifice the rest of your life for one day. The couples who spend under $10,000 on their wedding aren't cheap. They're not unromantic. They're not missing out. They're making a choice. They're choosing their future over a party. They're choosing security over status. They're choosing freedom over one perfect day. And 7 years earlier retirement? That's not a coincidence. That's compound interest. That's smart decisions. That's prioritizing what actually matters. So when you're planning your wedding, ask yourself this question. What do you want to remember? Do you want to remember the stress of planning? The debt that followed? The years of working longer than you needed to? Or do you want to remember the joy of starting your life together? The security of knowing you're on the same page about money? The freedom of knowing you made choices that set you up for success? Your wedding is not the most important day of your life. It's the first day of the most important partnership of your life. Start that partnership the way you want it to continue. With honesty, with intention, with a plan. That's not unromantic. That's love. Real love. The kind that builds a life together. Alright, I'll see you in the next one.